Hey everyone, welcome to Serious Coin. I'm Kelly Willis-Green, and this is another rich conversation about wealth. In fact, this one's about inherited wealth, because I think a lot of us are just a little bit curious about what it's like to grow up in an old money family. I mean, if you're third or fourth generation, it's just always been your reality that you have money. But it's also your reality that you have the weight of responsibility, privilege, and let's face it, a lot of times judgment by others. And I would think there'd be pressure to uphold the family legacy because you just never want to be that generation that screws it up. Well, if you caught the last episode of this podcast, you heard Matthew Wesley and I talk about what some families are doing to prepare the next generation. And in this episode, you're going to hear from a third generation inheritor who is living that experience, Christina Sorbara. Christina's grandfather, Sam Sorbara, started the Sorbara Group back in 1942 in Toronto. And today it is a very large real estate development and property management company. They've got interests in everything from industrial to commercial, retail, and residential properties. Christina works in the family business. She's part of the strategic leadership team, and she's Executive VP of Corporate Knowledge. She's also chair of the Sam Sorbara Family Foundation, along with so many other charitable roles. I can't list them all here. She's a mom of three and a former captain of Canada's national women's inline hockey team. She's competed in 9 world championships, and she won a gold medal in 2017. This is no idle heiress. In this interview, you'll hear about the pivotal moment when Christina first learned to advocate for herself in the family business. She talks about the baggage that she carries. And she's most passionate when she shares the creative ways she's preparing her kids to steward wealth. Have a listen.
I always get the question, how is your family able to get to the third generation, thinking of fourth generation, anticipating fifth? And I believe it's their relationships. And I talk a lot about how my mother was integral in that. If my father's running a business, most of the time it was the men in our family that were taking on those roles. But the connections that our mother was shepherding through the generations allows us today not to be strangers to our business colleagues. They're family members, but they're our business colleagues because we are blood linked to this organization. And because we have that basis of relationship, we're able to get through difficult situations. We're able to ask each other questions because at the end of the day, we all want the same goal, but we relate to each other. I think that is so key to families in general, but also families that are in business together.
What we all learn about money from our families of origin, either by osmosis or through some intention of our parents. What messages did you pick up about money, either from your parents or your grandfather who started the business?
Ask a lot of questions and make sure you have a good team around you, a supportive team, a trusted team. Those lessons, and to know, everyone says you can make mistakes and you can move on from the mistakes, but when you are very diligent about the process, I take a lot of sports analogies about practice. And in practice is not just showing up. It is the hard work. It is the failures. It is the challenges. It's overcoming. And I think those lessons that I've learned in sport is what I was taught through osmosis too. It's not like I was sat down and told, these are the lessons I want to teach you. It's, I'm going to bring you into conversations around the table to see the process and how decisions are made, and then being able to follow those decisions as they played out in real time.
Was that how you were prepared to steward wealth? Was it being at the table, or was there a more formal education, or how did that all happen?
It was formal in a sense that we had from a young age family advisors. They created every policy you can think of. We had family participation plans. And yet it wasn't a strict checklist of items. Like with anything, have to want to be there. You have to want to show up. You have to want to do the work. So I think the learning, they provided the policies, kind of the formal education with advisors, provided a framework. And then from that framework, it's how intensive you wanted to be to understand what they meant, especially if you're working in the family business, or if you got married, or if you wanted to go deeper on philanthropy. It was up to you. So I think it was formal to a sense how you wanted to engage with it.
How old were you when you were first brought into those meetings?
I drive to our offices and I think my car goes automatically there. I started coming to our head office with my father to learn, to understand the business when I was 12.
Yeah.
However, I went to university. I worked in Europe. I worked with other partners. So probably formally 20 years ago. Probably if you ask many people in family businesses, you learn a lot through osmosis. And what you do with that knowledge, how you grow with it, how you expand your base, that is up to you. It's like going to the gym. You may buy a gym membership, but they're not growing your muscles. You have to do the work. And I remind myself that every day because I have to recommit to this plan, to these goals that I set every single day.
What was the message around work in general? Was it always the plan that you would go into the family business? Was work optional? What were the messages?
So my parents silently modeled a work ethic of a constant work ethic. My mom was always in motion. Every day of my life, I don't remember her sitting down. And same with my father, always working, but it's working, it's building relationships. He had a balance, however we defined a balance, but it was modeled that you're always a doer. And that was coupled with giving back to your community. And I think that's one of the most impressive and lessons that I hold on to about going back to the work ethic was my parents' ability to shine so brightly in their business life, my mother's home life, but still make time for community and how important that was.
And I want to come back to philanthropy as one of the topics we'll discuss, but what have been some of the challenges that you've had to overcome in the family business because you're an inheritor?
So it's the question of being an inheritor and also being a woman. I've worked through all the different departments in our business. And at one time I was working in our property management department. And at one point I realized that because of my family relation to the business and because of the gender, I wasn't given the full role of my job. And I didn't like that because I wasn't learning as much as I could. So I remember asking my boss at the time, who, wasn't a family member, please give me some more of the job description. I want to be challenged. And next thing I knew, I was tasked with a lockout of one of our tenants in the middle of the night. And I am there. I still hear it in my body, alarms ringing. I'm with a locksmith. We're opening up a unit, switching the lock on the door. And I left there, still the noise, waiting for the police to show up, thinking, wow, is this what I asked for?
Be careful what you wish for.
But I was proud of myself. I did it. And after that, I said, I'm not going to allow anyone to not give me the full scope of the work that I'm doing, right? I have a choice. I can ask for it. I think that was a real turning point for me working as a family member in a business.
I want to ask you a little bit more about being third generation, because despite of all of its real and imagined benefits and privileges that I know you're well aware of and you're very grateful to enjoy, but inherited wealth can come with its own baggage, right? And nobody feels like they can complain. But I'm wondering, have you ever felt the weight of being an inheritor?
I like this question. I'm a competitor at heart. So every day I want to be better, that athlete's mindset. So when something's hard, it almost makes me better. And perhaps everyone has a wealth baggage story, regardless of what you are blessed with. But, Kelly, in thinking about inherited wealth, I truly believe that even heavier than the weight of a wealth baggage, I want us to think about the intersectionality for myself, wealth, gender, and sexual identity. I think trying to achieve greatness in all of those, push the boundaries, being a role model, and then trying to fall asleep at night. I think that when you say a weight of a baggage, that's what exhausts me, right? I want to be a role model for others. I mean, I'm an Italian Canadian woman born in Canada, successful family. I identify as LGBTQ. So every day I'm faced with invisible baggage. What pushes me, I think about my children. I want them to explicitly know, even if they have that baggage, but as anyone, women especially, they can take a lead on their wealth. They can make financial decisions. They don't need anyone. And there are allies out there to help you. And I think that's what alleviates that heavy baggage that you're talking about. And regardless of generations, whether it's my grandfather, my father, myself, my kids, those values that have been embedded in our family of determination, of resilience, they are the same. We're in different arenas, different playgrounds, but those are the same values. So that weight, the weight can be overcome. You either take it, you're going to suffer it, or you're going to use it to fuel you. And that's my choice. It's that fuel, and to move forward and to try and help myself, help my children, help my community with that.
Determination certainly seems to be embedded in Christina's DNA. And I would add to that a curious mind. She mentioned a couple of times her penchant for asking questions, and those qualities have certainly served her well as an investor. This is what she had to say about that learning process.
It's been a slow, long, evolving process. Some days I'm a lot more confident than other days. There wasn't a moment where it just clicked. I think I've always tried to be in the game, get my feet wet, trying to learn. My perspective was little small micro steps to improve my financial acumen, just to understand what it meant to invest.
So what would that be? Would that be reading books, attending lectures, investing, and making mistakes?
Yeah, it would be lectures. It would be events that advisors or banks held, putting myself in the room, a lot of wealth conferences, and then trying it out. You hear about some stock, go buy it, watch it. What happens with it? Lose it. Then what are you going to do? And even so, and who's going to push you to do that? I think on a bigger sense, I always bring back my kids into this. I bought crypto. I don't know anything about crypto, but my children were interested. So we opened up this account so we can watch it. So then again, as an investor, on a small sense, it is a trial and error. I'm very cautious, but I'm willing to try new things. And especially around my children, wanting them to see that, trying to model again that behavior of how do you gain knowledge to be a savvy investor. And really goes back to that practice and sport. I often think of myself when I think about investing, I say, when I play sport, I play a lot differently when I believe in myself. I don't need to hear the crowds cheering. I have to know I'm good. And so you can link that to investing. And these small steps of trial and error, that grows that confidence to one day maybe speed up my decision-making process, or maybe get more involved, diversify.
I definitely relate to that too. I started investing probably when I was maybe 22 with the help of my dad. And, I look back and I think I was more active and more hands-on then. And I made a lot of mistakes, but it wasn't a lot of money. I had a long time horizon. And I learned that it's actually harder than it looks. I now have advisors who do that for me, but you do develop lessons and rules that serve you well the rest of your life. So are there any rules or lessons that you have learned or that you follow?
For me, I'm very cautious. So, and the relationships I have with my advisors, I'm much like you. I have advisors are my experts. They're going to help guide me. I need to be comfortable and trust them in order to listen to their advice. So I think establishing that trust is a rule. I tend to ask a lot of questions, very resourceful. If you're giving me an option, I want to learn about it. I want to understand before I have to make a decision. And that sometimes takes time. And so I know I might miss out on returns. A brother of mine says to me, why do you wait? Just invest every single month. Just keep going. And, maybe for a couple months I do that, but I do get handcuffed when it feels very isolating. And so I go back to that personal team. And even with the team, it can be isolating at times. And if we have this in 10 years, maybe I'm going to have some different rules that I live by. I am engaged. I'm in the arena. And that's that's an incredible step that I can model for myself and gain confidence from. One of the other avenues that I've gotten into was joining an angel investing group. And it was for the fact of it showing me different investment options and expanding my horizon and how they process the deal flow. What are the steps? And so that I can look at it from a group perspective as opposed to someone asking me, would you like to participate? And then me not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So this group it's another educational tool, but it's real. So I can follow along. And that's been another step. I want to listen to different options. I want to hear about the exciting innovations going on. I want to learn about tech. I have a brother that's into tech, the intersection of tech and health and wellness. It interests me. We've done an investment with one of his companies. I trust him. I understand what he's doing. I know him. It's exciting. But I would never do that unless he brought that forward, right? And so a lot of the stuff I also do with my siblings because that relationship piece is already there. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I think I'm risk averse.
I know that you are passionate about encouraging other women to have agency over their finances, and you speak about it on panels and to groups of women and through this podcast. So when you're talking to women, what do they tell you about what keeps them from taking control?
Very clearly, it's not even knowing where they stand. That's usually a question they have, and how to start that discipline of taking agency over your wealth so you can be the decision maker. One of the things I always bring up, by 2045, women are going to be managing $30 trillion worldwide.
Yeah.
This signifies a huge opportunity for women. And why aren't more women knowing that, saying, wow, I better get to the front of the line. I want to understand who are making these decisions for me, or are there different decisions I can be making that you can be at that table? Women, maybe in general, the ones in my kind of realm, are many times afraid to break the model that they were born into, that they married. And I don't think it has to be that you're breaking any model. I mean, it's just you're taking agency and you have the right to ask questions. I know I've talked to you about this before, Kelly, about that 100-hour rule that I talk to my children about when they are uncomfortable. It's the 100-hour rule that I tell them, if you do anything 16 to 18 minutes a day, by the end of the year, you're going to be 95% better than anyone in the room with you. I'm not saying you're going to be the best at it, but you will finally have that confidence to speak up. So it goes to investing. It goes to women taking agency, children learning, inheritors of wealth. It is getting in the game and knowing you have a right to be there. And that's always a big message.
What do you think the financial industry needs to do differently to engage more women?
It is to listen. Let their clients talk. I am constantly bombarded with different advisors, different banks, different investment firms telling me their philosophy of how they are going to build wealth, but they're not listening. And if you're not listening, how are you building trust with your client or with a prospective client? Just because you show me a nice pamphlet about your philosophy doesn't mean that I've trusted you. I think the wise financial managers, advisors, they get that. And they give you space and trust. And they might not have the best management fee, but I believe relationships will eventually win out there.
What is it you're wanting to tell them, or what are they listening for?
They're listening to understand what your goals are, or maybe you don't have any goals, what your fears are, why you haven't made a decision on where to invest your money. What are you worried about? What keeps you up at night? What is a goal? And I try and be very direct and very transparent because there's a lot of things I don't know. So if someone's telling me, what's your long-term goal and which asset class do you want to be in? If I don't know, if I haven't even thought about that, you're already putting me on my heels.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm going to shut this conversation down.
Yeah.
Help me understand why diversification is important. Help me understand why we should look at venture capital, whatever it is. And then I'm going to be able to be a better client and be able to set up my future better.
Part of setting up her future means educating her 3 children about money and the family legacy. She told me she finds herself having these conversations a lot earlier than she expected.
I thank Google for causing a lot of grief in my life, a lot of conversations that we probably shouldn't be having at their young age. And it's the power of the internet, getting any information and Googling the names of your parents and information that you can't control on the internet. So you're starting to have conversations with children that don't even have fully developed brains, that you can't even rationalize with them. So you are learning how to talk about a future at a really simple level. It is difficult to put boundaries around what they read and to bring them down to earth and to try and also skip through the conversation, keep it open, but skip through it. For my children, I do talk about our family business a lot, but I talk about it in terms of family legacy, in terms of where they came from, their grandparents, their great grandparents, wanting them to understand how that history is weaved through their lives and how they got here. And one of the blessings that they have brought to me, not only it's wonderful to be able to have children, but they've really expanded my need to understand financial literacy because of the questions that they ask, because it's a big responsibility to have to know that it's up to you to guide them as they launch into their own lives. I used to think my job is to raise thoughtful children and prepare them, but I have slowly had to bring in finances into the question. And really, it's because of internet. Because I don't think I, at this age, learned any of this.
So they would Google, how does that conversation go? Like they're researching the family and they see the net worth?
They research the family and maybe pictures of buildings would come up, right? And there's price tags beside buildings. It's all about numbers. And they watch a lot on YouTube as well. And so they understand the cost of really large items, right? And they say things like, oh, why don't you have that kind of car? Why don't you have what so-and-so has? Because you have a business. It's all relative. They're not connecting the dots, but when they engage in things that I find interesting, I go with it. And that's how the crypto started. It was an ad in the middle of a hockey game and they were interested in it. And we literally opened an account and bought crypto during the intermission of a hockey game because it was something I said, wow, this is a good learning opportunity. I want to keep talking to them. I want to validate their thinking. And when I see thought processes that I want to grow or encourage, they understand our business. They understand we build buildings. And now in the news with all this Taylor Swift excitement that's going on, a son of mine asked, we really need to get Taylor Swift over. And I thought, how is that ever going to happen? And he said, if we put you two together on a picture on your Instagram account for the business, more people will buy your homes because that's what's happening with the football player. And as much as we laughed about it, I wanted to say that is never going to happen, but they're already connecting the more followers, more money. They're connecting the marketing. If I do this, this will be better. And so I encourage that kind of thinking, even if it's pie in the sky. That to me is very impressive that they already understand that so young.
In addition to helping her children have a healthy relationship with money, Christina is passionate about instilling the values and tradition of philanthropy. And I thought she had some really creative ways for engaging both her generation and the next in giving as a family.
So with our family, I really try hard with the different generations to further their engagement, their learning through giving programs amongst the generations that are outside of our business, through educational opportunities, through events. And it seems to be well received. And it's something also that I don't, even with no response, you don't stop doing it because people's uptake for information is at different speeds.
You do some fun things around Christmas time with your family.
Oh, that currently it is a great, I try and keep it fresh too, because you want people to show up. And so, yeah, one of the things we're doing now with our third generation is in our annual dinner, Christmas dinner at the end of the year, everyone arrives with a blank check and the thought of what organization they would ask everyone to donate to. We put all these checks in a hat, and at the end of the dinner, I talk a little bit about our most current group gifts and where they're going. And it's a very short kind of synopsis of the year. And then we pick a check out of the hat. And whatever family member's check gets pulled out, they share with everyone why their organization of choice is where we all need to send our group gift. So we all write a check to where the person gives us the organization, and we have a group gift at the end of it. Everyone has to write a check for the same amount. It's per person. So if you bring 2 people, you got to do double. It's great. It's usually a large contribution because they're usually small organizations as well. So it makes an impact, especially at the end of the year. And for my children, it's just at a different scale. It is encouraging whatever kind of philanthropic initiative is in their realm, whether it's a food bank that's going on at their school, whether it's with their sport team, they have the volunteer time. But the basic premise that I teach them, that I was taught as a young person, is always think of others and always help your community. That was modeled to me. It wasn't told to me sitting down at a table. It was modeled time and time again. And that's something I try and model for my own kids, that there's always more you can be doing to help others.
Well, thanks for sharing and opening up, because you have had this experience a lot longer than many others who are listening. And so I know that people love to hear from others about what they're doing and how they manage certain challenges. So thank you.
I listened to all your episodes, and I'm always so impressed. I've told you how the guests that you bring on and how you're able to generate those insights and the purposeful topics. And
thank you.
It's great. And I hope your listeners are going to, gain something that can help them.
Okay, so it's coming at the end of the podcast, the rapid fire questions, where just off the top of your head, if you'll answer the first question, or really statement, to me, money is
opportunity, it's responsibility, and that might have different meanings to other people. But I was raised, and I'm raising my kids with that value, that with a blessed fortune, you have an even a bigger responsibility to help your community. And that's something I live with every day.
What is the purpose of your wealth in your life?
I want to get to 100 years in our family business. I think the purpose is to further our family's legacy and that business and the families and the people that we create homes for, or we create structures for their businesses. It's to sustain that. Of course, I want to provide the same upbringing to my own children, to their children, and travel the world to see how others do that. And then ultimately, I want to feed a vehicle. I want to feed a vehicle for sustained philanthropic giving.
Has there ever been anything about your wealth that makes you feel uncomfortable?
Not knowing questions to ask, not understanding, being put in a room where I am the owner of something that I signed a paper of, and have no idea what it is, just because, again, of that blood link. So that is uncomfortable. But again, because of who I am, that uncomfortableness means, okay, go work harder, figure it out. And if you don't want that for your own children, start young, so they don't have to be in that position.
Have you ever felt judged because of your wealth?
Definitely judged because of, again, goes back to that intersectionality of wealth, gender, and sexual identity. I think I've been judged by my wealth, judged by my gender, and that's daily. And what is that force field that you put around you to get up every day and to fight the battles that will further your life?
So what is that force field for you?
For me, it's a team. It's a team of people, but it is constantly I'm very curious for learning and how I can differentiate myself and further, have the kind of arson to talk back, right? To validate my position in my life, in my business, in my community. Hopefully that is a model for other people to say, wow, she can do it. I'm going to try and do it. And that maybe they can change their life.
It's obvious that Christina Sorbara is not riding the coattails of her family. I mean, consider the challenges she's had to overcome as a competitive athlete and as a woman making her own way in a traditionally male-dominated business and industry, and as someone who strives to be a role model in the LGBTQ community. She never stops trying, and she never stops learning. I can't wait to hear what she'll do next. If you'd like to hear more about her family business story, you can visit their website, sorbara.com. Thanks for listening. We have more rich conversations about wealth lined up this season, so make sure you subscribe to catch them when they drop. I'm Kelly Willis Green, and you've been listening to Serious Coin Podcast. Serious Coin is provided for your general interest only, and nothing we discuss should be taken as investment, tax, legal, or other professional advice. Always talk to a licensed professional before you make any financial decisions.